The mayor's daughter just won $10 million. The radio crackled through static as Elias Cray adjusted a hydraulic valve 140 feet above the Kenmore River. Wind sliced through his safety harness while he recalibrated tension measurements on the bridge's main cable system. By noon, his wife, his 17-year-old son, and his mother-in-law were sitting around another man's kitchen table, smiling like Elias was already dead. He didn't know that yet. Elias climbed down from the inspection platform, his steel-toed boots hitting solid concrete with practiced precision. 23 years of bridge maintenance had taught him patience, attention to detail, and how to spot structural weakness before catastrophic failure. Those same skills would serve him well in the coming weeks. His phone buzzed against his chest. Text from Clarissa. "Working late again. Don't wait up. Nothing unusual there." Corporate headhunting kept her busy, especially with the quarterly earnings reports coming out. She'd been landing bigger clients lately, pulling in serious commission checks. Good for the family, even if it meant fewer dinners together. Elias packed his tools methodically, checked the torque wrench, secured the safety cables, logged the day's measurements in his field notebook. Everything had its place. Everything served a purpose. Order mattered when people's lives depended on your work. The drive home took 40 minutes through suburban sprawl and strip malls. Radio stayed tuned to local news while he navigated traffic. The lottery winner story kept repeating every 15 minutes. $10 million to some lucky family in Ridgemont. Good for them. He pulled into his driveway at 6:30, noting the unfamiliar BMW parked where Clarissa usually left her Lexus. Company car, maybe, or a client meeting running long at the house. She'd done that before when negotiations got complicated. The front door opened before he reached it. Dad's home. Carson didn't look up from his phone. His tone carried the flat disinterest that 17-year-olds had perfected into an art form. "Hey, kiddo, Mom around?" Kitchen. Elias hung his work jacket on the hallway hook and followed voices toward the back of the house. 3 people sat around the breakfast nook table where his family usually ate dinner. Clarissa wore her navy business suit, the one she reserved for important meetings. Her mother, Melanie, sat across from her, spine straight, silver hair pulled into its usual severe bun. Between them sat a man Elias didn't recognize. Mid-40s, expensive suit, confident posture, handsome in the way that television anchors and politicians manage to look handsome. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, perfect handshake when he stood to greet Elias. "You must be the husband. Neil Drake." The man's grip was firm, but not aggressive. Professional. "I've heard wonderful things about you. Elias Cray, nice to meet you." Clarissa gestured to an empty chair. "Neil's been helping us with some financial planning, family investments, estate management, that sort of thing." "Didn't know we needed estate management." "Well, with the lottery winnings and everything, it makes sense to get professional advice." Elias sat down slowly. "Lottery winnings?" Melanie leaned forward, her voice carrying the barely contained excitement of someone who'd been keeping a secret too long. "Clarissa bought the winning ticket last week. $10 million before taxes. We're still processing the paperwork, but Neil's been invaluable in helping us understand our options." The room went quiet except for the kitchen clock ticking above the sink. $10 million, Elias repeated. 7.2 after federal and state taxes, Neil said smoothly. Still a life-changing amount. Enough to set the family up for generations if we handle it properly. Clarissa reached across the table and touched Elias's hand. "I wanted to surprise you. I know you've been working so hard all those long hours on the bridges. This changes everything for us." "When did you buy the ticket?" "Last Tuesday. I stopped at the gas station on 5th Street after my client meeting. Just felt lucky, I guess." Elias nodded. Tuesday, she'd worked late. Wednesday, too. Thursday, she'd had dinner with her mother to discuss some family business. Friday, she'd mentioned a headache and gone to bed early. That's incredible news. "Neil's been explaining how we can maximize the investment potential," Melanie said. "Real estate diversification, municipal bonds, some international markets, very sophisticated strategies." Neil opened a leather portfolio and spread papers across the table. Charts, graphs, projected returns. Everything looked professional, legitimate, carefully planned. "The key is moving quickly," Neil said. "Market opportunities don't wait, especially in the current economic climate. I've already identified several properties that would generate substantial passive income." "Properties?" "A vacation home in Myrtle Beach, a rental duplex downtown, maybe a small commercial space, diversified portfolio approach." Neil pointed to columns of numbers. Conservative projections show we could double the principal value within 5 years. Clarissa squeezed Elias's hand. Isn't this exciting? No more worrying about Carson's college tuition, no more putting off home improvements. We can finally live the way we deserve to live. The way we deserve. You know what I mean. You've sacrificed so much for this family. Working those dangerous jobs, coming home exhausted every night. This is our chance to change everything. Elias studied the papers spread across the table. Neil's handwriting was neat, professional. His calculations looked accurate. The investment strategies seemed reasonable, if aggressive. Where do I sign? Neil smiled. Actually, since Clarissa purchased the ticket and the winnings are considered her separate property under state law, she'll be handling most of the financial decisions. But we definitely want to keep you informed about everything. Of course, family decisions. Exactly. Clarissa gathered the papers. Neil's going to help us set up some accounts tomorrow. Get everything organized properly. Sounds like you've got it all figured out. We've been talking about this for hours, Melanie said. Neil's been so patient explaining all the legal complexities. Did you know that lottery winnings can be structured to minimize tax liability if you establish the right trust arrangements within 60 days? I didn't know that. There's a lot to learn, Neil said. Financial planning isn't intuitive for most people. That's why professional guidance makes such a difference. Carson wandered into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. Are we ordering pizza again? Actually, Clarissa said, Neil's taking us out to dinner to celebrate. That new steakhouse downtown. All of us? The family, yes. You should come too, Elias. This is a big moment. Elias looked around the table. His wife, her mother, the financial advisor who'd somehow become central to their celebration dinner. His son pulling leftovers from the refrigerator, already disconnected from whatever adult conversation was happening. I'm pretty tired. Long day on the bridge. Why don't you go ahead? Are you sure? This is important? I'm sure. Celebrate for both of us. Neil stood and extended his hand again. Pleasure meeting you, Elias. I'm sure we'll be working together closely in the coming weeks. I'm sure we will. They gathered their papers and headed for the front door. Clarissa kissed Elias's cheek before leaving. Her perfume smelled different than usual. More expensive. Don't wait up, she said. We might be late. Elias watched through the front window as they climbed into Neil's BMW. Clarissa sat in the passenger seat, Melanie and Carson in the back. They pulled out of the driveway at 7:15. He stood at the window until their tail lights disappeared around the corner. Then he went to his workshop in the garage and pulled out his laptop. The state lottery website showed Tuesday's winning numbers clearly. 6 digits, drawn at 11 p.m., broadcast live on local television. One winning ticket sold at Morrison's gas station on 5th Street. Elias checked the timestamp. The ticket was purchased at 3:47 p.m. on Tuesday. He opened his phone and scrolled through his text messages. Tuesday afternoon, 3:30 p.m., meeting running long, home by 8. He'd replied, no problem, leftover pasta in the fridge. She'd texted back at 4:15. Client wants to extend discussion, might be very late, don't cook. So she'd bought the lottery ticket between those two messages. 28 minutes to stop at the gas station, select numbers, purchase the ticket, and return to her meeting. Except Morrison's gas station was 12 miles from her office in the opposite direction from their house. Elias pulled up Google Maps and traced the route. From Clarissa's downtown office to Morrison's gas station, 18 minutes in Tuesday afternoon traffic. From the gas station back to her office, 22 minutes. Round trip, 40 minutes. But she'd only had 28 minutes between text messages, unless she wasn't at her office when she sent the first message. Elias opened his filing cabinet and pulled out the folder labeled Insurance, Auto. Clarissa's car insurance included GPS tracking for the Discount Safe Driver program. He'd signed up for the family plan 2 years ago to save money on premiums. The insurance company's website required his login credentials. Password, their wedding anniversary plus Carson's birth year. The system loaded slowly, displaying a map interface with vehicle location history. Tuesday, March 15th, Clarissa's Lexus. 2 p.m., parked at 1247 Maple Street. Residential address, 3:30 p.m., still at 1247 Maple Street. 3:45 p.m., en route to Morrison's gas station. 4:15 p.m., returning to 1247 Maple Street. 6:30 p.m., en route home. Elias pulled up the property records for 1247 Maple Street. Public information available through the county assessor's website. Owner, Neil B. Drake. Purchased 18 months ago. 4-bedroom colonial built in 1995. Property value, $430,000. He leaned back in his workshop chair and stared at the computer screen. Clarissa had spent Tuesday afternoon at Neil's house. She'd driven to Morrison's gas station, bought the winning lottery ticket, and returned to Neil's house. She'd lied about working late. She'd lied about meeting with a client. She'd been planning this. Elias closed the laptop and sat in the dark garage for a long time. Tools hung in neat rows on pegboard walls. Everything organized, everything in its place. His workbench held the torque wrench he'd been recalibrating, the safety cables that needed inspection, the field notebook where he recorded daily measurements. 23 years of marriage. 19 years since Carson was born. 2 decades of building a life together, saving money, making plans, trusting each other with everything that mattered. His phone buzzed. Text from Clarissa. Dinner was amazing. Neil knows this city so well. Home around midnight. He typed back, "Have fun." She replied with a heart emoji. Elias went inside and made himself a sandwich. Ham, cheese, mustard, lettuce. Same thing he'd been eating for lunch on bridge sites for 20 years. He sat at the kitchen table where Neil had spread his financial planning documents an hour earlier. The celebration dinner was still happening somewhere across town. His wife, his son, his mother-in-law, and the man who'd been sleeping with Clarissa for at least 18 months. All of them toasting their good fortune with expensive wine and perfect steaks. $7.2 million after taxes. Enough to change everything. Enough to leave a husband behind. Elias finished his sandwich and went to bed. He lay awake until he heard Clarissa's car in the driveway at 12:45 a.m. She came upstairs quietly, trying not to wake him, brushed her teeth, changed into pajamas, slipped under the covers. "How was dinner?" he asked in the darkness. "Wonderful. Neil really knows how to pick restaurants. And Carson actually seemed engaged for once, asking questions about college, talking about the future. That's good. I'm sorry you didn't come with us. This is such an exciting time for our family." "I understand." She kissed his shoulder and rolled onto her side. Within 10 minutes, her breathing settled into the rhythm of deep sleep. Elias stared at the ceiling until dawn. The next morning, Clarissa left early for her appointment with Neil at the bank. Something about establishing trust accounts and investment portfolios. Very complicated, she explained, but Neil would handle everything professionally. Elias drove to the Kenmore Bridge for his regular inspection schedule. 140 feet above the river, checking cable tension and joint integrity, he thought about structural engineering principles. Load distribution, stress points, how much pressure different materials could handle before catastrophic failure. At lunch, he called his lawyer. "Jimmy, it's Elias Cray. I need to ask you about something." James Morton had handled the legal work for Elias's house purchase, his will, some minor business matters over the years. Reliable, thorough, not particularly expensive. "What's on your mind? Hypothetically, if someone in a marriage wins the lottery, who legally owns the money? Depends on the state and the specific circumstances. Generally, lottery winnings are considered separate property belonging to whoever purchased the ticket. But if marital funds were used to buy the ticket, things get more complicated." "What about prenuptial agreements? Prenups can definitely affect how winnings are distributed." "Why? Did Clarissa hit the Powerball?" "Something like that. Can you look up our prenup? I need to understand exactly what it says about financial assets acquired during the marriage." "I can do that. Give me a couple hours." Jimmy called back at 3:30. "Elias, I've got your prenup here. Very interesting document. Looks like it was drafted primarily to protect Clarissa's family assets, but there are some unusual clauses that work in your favor, such as Section 12, subsection C. Any financial assets acquired by either party during the marriage become joint property subject to equal division, regardless of the source, unless both parties agree in writing to maintain separate ownership." What does that mean in plain English? It means half the lottery money is legally yours. And here's the kicker. Section 15 gives either spouse the right to freeze all marital assets pending legal review if they suspect financial misconduct or fraud. Financial misconduct, hiding assets, making major financial decisions without spousal consent, attempting to transfer marital property without proper notification. The prenup was designed to prevent either spouse from cleaning out the bank accounts and disappearing. Elias sat in his truck, phone pressed to his ear, watching traffic move across the bridge below. "Jimmy, if someone wanted to freeze marital assets, what would that process look like?" "File a motion with the family court. Present evidence of suspicious financial activity. Judge issues a temporary restraining order preventing any major transactions until the matter can be reviewed. Usually takes 48 to 72 hours. How much evidence would you need? Documentation showing attempts to hide or transfer assets without spousal knowledge. Bank records, property transfers, that sort of thing. Pretty straightforward if you have the right paperwork. Thanks, Jimmy. I'll be in touch. Elias drove to the county clerk's office and requested property transaction records for the past 30 days. Public information, available to anyone willing to pay the $5 processing fee. Neil Drake had been busy. March 10th, filed articles of incorporation for Drake Investment Management, LLC. March 12th, applied for business banking accounts at First National Bank. March 14th, submitted preliminary purchase agreements for 3 properties, a beachfront condo in Myrtle Beach, a downtown duplex, and a small commercial building on Elm Street. March 15th, the day Clarissa won the lottery. March 16th, filed partnership agreements, naming Clarissa Marlowe Cray as primary investor in Drake Investment Management, LLC. Everything had been planned in advance. The business entity, the bank accounts, the property purchases. Neil had been setting up the infrastructure to handle Clarissa's lottery winnings before she'd even bought the ticket, which meant he'd known the winning numbers ahead of time. Elias drove home and spent the evening researching lottery security procedures. The State Gaming Commission website explained the drawing process in detail. Random number generation, multiple security cameras, independent auditing, criminal background checks for all employees. But lottery drawings were broadcast live on television. The numbers were announced on radio stations, posted on websites, displayed on electronic billboards throughout the state. Information spread instantly through multiple channels, unless someone had access to the numbers before the official drawing. Elias found the contact information for the State Gaming Commission's Fraud Investigation Unit. The website encouraged citizens to report suspicious activity related to lottery games. Anonymous tips were welcome. He drafted an email explaining Neil's suspicious business activities and their connection to the lottery drawing timeline. Detailed information, specific dates, public records documentation. Everything presented objectively, without accusations or emotional language. He didn't send it yet. Thursday morning, Clarissa announced that she and Neil were driving to Myrtle Beach to finalize the beachfront condo purchase. A business trip, very important for the investment portfolio. They'd be gone until Sunday. 4 days? Real estate negotiations can be complicated. Neil wants to inspect the property personally, meet with local contractors, assess the rental market potential. Very thorough approach. I'm sure it is. Melanie's coming too. She has some experience with vacation property management from her time in Florida. So his wife, her mother, and her financial advisor were taking a 4-day business trip together. Leaving Friday morning, returning Sunday evening. Carson would stay home because he had school commitments. Sounds like a productive weekend. I know it's short notice, but opportunities like this don't wait. Neil says the Myrtle Beach market is extremely competitive right now. Of course it is. Friday morning, Elias watched from the workshop window as Clarissa loaded suitcases into Neil's BMW. She'd packed carefully. Business attire, casual clothes, swimwear. Everything she'd need for a long weekend at the beach. They pulled out of the driveway at 8:15. Elias waited 30 minutes, then drove to Jimmy Morton's law office. I need to file that motion we discussed. Freeze all marital assets pending review. Jimmy looked up from his desk, reading glasses perched on his nose. You found evidence of financial misconduct? Elias spread documents across the conference table. Property records, business filings, bank applications, insurance tracking reports. Everything organized chronologically, cross-referenced, thoroughly documented. My wife has been working with a financial advisor to invest her lottery winnings. Except the advisor set up his business infrastructure before she won the lottery, and she bought the winning ticket while parked at his house. Jimmy studied the paperwork carefully. This is very interesting, very suspicious. When did you discover this information? Tuesday night after they introduced me to Neil for the first time, and they're making major financial decisions without your involvement. They're buying property in South Carolina as we speak. $300,000 condo purchase with plans for additional real estate investments. Using marital funds? $7.2 million in lottery winnings that legally belong to both of us, according to our prenuptial agreement. Jimmy leaned back in his chair. Elias, this is exactly the kind of situation the asset freeze provision was designed to prevent. I can have the paperwork filed within 2 hours. Do it. You understand this will prevent all major financial transactions until the court can review the matter? No property purchases, no large withdrawals, no asset transfers. I understand. And you're prepared for the consequences? This will essentially declare financial war on your wife. Elias gathered the documents and stacked them neatly. Jimmy, my wife has been sleeping with another man for at least 18 months. She's planning to use lottery money that's legally half mine to buy property with him. She lied about how she won the money, when she won it, and where she bought the ticket. She's in South Carolina right now, probably celebrating their successful fraud with champagne and ocean views. Point taken. File the motion. The court order was issued at 4:30 Friday afternoon. All financial assets belonging to Elias and Clarissa Cray were frozen pending judicial review. No withdrawals above $500, no property purchases, no major transactions of any kind. The order was automatically transmitted to all relevant financial institutions within 2 hours. Saturday morning, Elias received a phone call. "What the hell did you do?" Clarissa's voice was tight with controlled rage. "Good morning. How's Myrtle Beach?" "The bank called Neil. They said our accounts are frozen. Some kind of legal hold related to marital asset disputes." "That's unfortunate." "Don't play games with me, Elias. What did you do?" "I exercised my legal rights under our prenuptial agreement." "Your legal rights?" Section 15. Either spouse can freeze marital assets if they suspect financial misconduct. Silence on the other end of the line. Financial misconduct. Hiding assets, making major financial decisions without spousal consent, attempting to transfer marital property without proper notification. Exactly what you've been doing for the past week. I haven't hidden anything from you. You bought the winning lottery ticket while parked at Neil's house. You've been planning real estate investments with him since before you won the money. You're in South Carolina right now trying to buy property without my knowledge or consent. More silence. I don't know what you think you know. I know you've been sleeping with Neil for at least 18 months. I know he set up his business specifically to handle your lottery winnings. I know you've been lying to me about everything. Elias, you're being ridiculous. Neil is a professional financial advisor. We're making smart investment decisions for our family's future. Our family? Yes, our family. You, me, Carson. Everything we're doing is for the benefit of our family. Then why didn't you include me in any of the planning? Because you don't understand these kinds of sophisticated financial strategies. You're a bridge inspector, not an investment advisor. We're trying to protect you from making mistakes that could cost us millions of dollars. Elias sat in his workshop, surrounded by precisely organized tools and equipment. Everything in its place, everything serving a specific purpose. Clarissa, you can come home and we can discuss this rationally, or you can stay in South Carolina and explain to a judge why you've been committing infidelity and attempting to defraud your husband out of his legal share of marital assets. I'm not committing infidelity, and I'm not defrauding anyone. Hotel records will show exactly who's sleeping where this weekend. And the State Gaming Commission is very interested in Neil's unusual business activities. The Gaming Commission? Lottery fraud is a federal crime. Setting up business infrastructure before the drawing, having advanced knowledge of winning numbers, purchasing tickets under suspicious circumstances. They take that kind of thing very seriously. You contacted the Gaming Commission? I provided them with detailed documentation of Neil's activities, timeline, property records, business filings, everything properly organized and professionally presented. The line went quiet again. What do you want, Elias? I want you to come home. I want you to end your relationship with Neil. I want us to handle the lottery money legally and ethically, with proper legal counsel and full transparency. And if I refuse, then you can explain your choices to Carson, to your mother, to the Gaming Commission, and eventually to a divorce court judge. You wouldn't dare. Clarissa, I've spent 23 years of marriage trusting you completely. I've worked dangerous jobs to support our family. I've been patient, loyal, and honest about everything. You've repaid that by lying, cheating, and trying to steal money that's legally half mine. The lottery ticket was purchased with my money. Marital funds. Everything we own belongs to both of us according to the prenup your mother insisted we sign. My mother had nothing to do with this. Your mother is in South Carolina with you and Neil right now. She's been part of the planning from the beginning. How do you... She stopped herself. Insurance, GPS tracking. Your car's location history is automatically recorded. Very convenient for establishing patterns of suspicious behavior. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting my legal interests. The conversation ended when Clarissa hung up the phone. Sunday evening, Neil's BMW pulled into the driveway at 9:45 p.m. Elias watched from the workshop window as three people climbed out of the car. Clarissa looked exhausted. Melanie looked angry. Neil looked like someone who'd spent the weekend discovering that his carefully planned fraud had fallen apart. They gathered at the front door for a brief conversation. Tense body language, aggressive gestures, voices too low to hear from across the yard. Neil handed Clarissa a manila envelope, kissed her cheek, and drove away. Clarissa and her mother came inside. Elias heard them talking in the kitchen, then footsteps on the stairs, doors closing, water running in the upstairs bathroom. He went to bed at 11:30. Clarissa was already under the covers, facing away from him. "How was your trip?" "Productive." "Good to hear." She didn't respond. Monday morning, Clarissa left for work without saying goodbye. Carson ate breakfast in silence, grabbed his backpack, and headed for school. Normal routine, but everything felt different. Elias drove to the Kenmore Bridge and spent the morning checking cable tension on the North Tower. 140 feet above the river, surrounded by steel and concrete and the steady rush of traffic below, he thought about leverage points and structural engineering. At lunch, Jimmy called. "The Gaming Commission investigator wants to meet with you this afternoon. Agent Sarah Walsh, Fraud Investigation Unit. She's reviewed your documentation and has some additional questions." "What kind of questions?" "Standard procedure for lottery fraud cases. Timeline clarification, witness statements, evidence verification. Nothing complicated." Agent Walsh met Elias at the county courthouse at 3 p.m. Mid-30s, professional demeanor, carrying a thick case file and a digital recorder. "Mr. Cray, thank you for coming in. I've reviewed the materials you submitted, and I have to say, this is one of the more interesting cases we've seen recently." "Interesting how?" "Your wife's financial advisor has been on our radar for several months. Neil Drake has connections to at least 3 other suspicious lottery wins in neighboring states. Always the same pattern. Establish business infrastructure before the drawing, work with clients who win large jackpots, immediate real estate purchases in out-of-state markets." "So this isn't his first time." "Definitely not. We've been building a case, but we needed evidence of advanced planning and coordination. Your documentation provides exactly what we were missing." Agent Walsh spread photos across the conference table. Surveillance images, property records, bank transaction summaries. "Here's what we think happened. Drake has been working with lottery employees to gain advance access to winning numbers. He identifies potential clients, establishes personal relationships, and helps them purchase winning tickets. Then he takes a substantial cut of the winnings through fraudulent investment schemes." "How substantial?" 60 to 70% in most cases. He convinces the winners to make large real estate purchases, but the properties are overvalued and he gets kickbacks from the sellers. The sufferers end up with bad investments and depleted lottery winnings. Elias studied the surveillance photos. Neil entering lottery commission offices, meeting with unknown associates, visiting properties that had been purchased by previous lottery winners. "What happens now?" "We're coordinating with federal authorities to build a racketeering case. Lottery fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, very serious charges." "And my wife?" "That depends on her level of involvement. If she was an unwitting sufferer, she might face minimal charges. If she was a willing participant, things get more complicated." "She's been having an affair with him for at least 18 months. That suggests deeper involvement than we initially assumed." Agent Walsh turned off the digital recorder and leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Cray, I need to ask you something off the record. How do you want this to play out?" "What do you mean?" "We can arrest Drake tomorrow and freeze all the lottery money while we build our case. That would protect your financial interests, but also prevent your wife from accessing any of the funds." "For how long?" "Federal investigations take time. 18 months, maybe 2 years before everything gets resolved." "What's the alternative?" "We let Drake continue operating while we gather additional evidence. Build a stronger case, document more crimes, identify other sufferers, but that means your wife continues working with him." Elias thought about Clarissa sleeping beside him last night, silent and angry and still lying about everything. He thought about Carson, confused and caught in the middle of whatever was happening to his family. He thought about 23 years of marriage and trust and shared goals. "Arrest him." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." Agent Walsh gathered her files and stood up. We'll coordinate the arrest with local authorities, probably Wednesday morning when he's at his office. Very public, very visible. The media will be all over this story. Good? Mr. Cray, I have to warn you. When this becomes public, your wife's involvement will be scrutinized. If she's charged as an accomplice, things could get very difficult for your family. Things are already very difficult for my family. Tuesday evening, Clarissa announced that she and Neil were meeting with a real estate attorney to finalize the investment strategy. Something about trust structures and tax implications. Very complicated legal matters. Where's the meeting? Neil's office, 7:30 p.m. I'll drive you. That's not necessary. Neil will pick me up. I insist. Husbands should be involved in major financial decisions. Clarissa studied his face carefully. Fine. But this is a professional meeting, Elias. Let Neil handle the legal complexities. Of course. At 7:15, Neil's BMW pulled into the driveway. He looked tired, stressed, like someone who'd been spending too much time worrying about federal investigations. Elias walked outside and knocked on the passenger window. Neil, good to see you again. Elias, I thought Clarissa was riding with me. Change of plans. I'll drive her to your office. You can show me where it is. Neil glanced toward the house, then back at Elias. Actually, we've decided to meet at the restaurant instead. More comfortable environment for detailed legal discussions. Which restaurant? Angelo's downtown. You know the place? I know it. Clarissa came outside carrying her purse and a manila folder. She kissed Neil's cheek through the car window, then walked to Elias's truck. Ready? Ready. They followed Neil's BMW through downtown traffic to Angelo's restaurant. Valet parking, white tablecloths, prices that required special occasions or business expense accounts. The hostess seated them at a corner table with good views of the dining room. Neil ordered wine. Clarissa requested the salmon. Elias chose a steak. Normal dinner conversation, except for the tension crackling between all three of them. So, Neil, Elias said after the appetizers arrived, tell me about your background. How long have you been in financial planning? About 15 years. Started in corporate consulting, moved into private wealth management about 8 years ago. Interesting transition. What made you change directions? More personal connection with clients. Corporations are all about quarterly numbers and shareholder returns. Individual families have more complex needs, such as estate planning, tax optimization, investment diversification. People work hard their whole lives. They deserve sophisticated strategies to maximize their wealth. Elias cut his steak methodically. Must be challenging, staying current with all the regulatory changes. Very challenging. Financial markets evolve constantly. What worked 5 years ago might be completely obsolete today. Good thing you stay ahead of the curve. Neil smiled, but his eyes looked nervous. That's the job. Halfway through dinner, Elias excused himself to use the restroom. Instead, he walked to the bar and ordered a beer. The bartender was a young woman with tattoos covering both arms and a name tag that read Jessica. Excuse me, Jessica, I'm meeting some business associates here tonight. Has Neil Drake been in recently? Neil? Yeah, he's here all the time. Usually with different women, though. Probably married, if you know what I mean. Different women? Blonde last week, brunette the week before. Always dressed nice, always looks like business meetings, but they sit really close and do a lot of hand-holding. Interesting. Why? You know him? We're discussing some investments. Well, he tips well and doesn't cause trouble. But between you and me, something seems off about him. Off how? He always pays cash. Never credit cards, never checks. Just pulls out this huge roll of bills like he's some kind of pill dealer. Elias thanked Jessica and returned to the table. Neil and Clarissa were leaning close together, discussing something in low voices. They separated when he sat down. Everything okay? Clarissa asked. Fine. Just needed some air. They finished dinner without further conversation. Neil paid the check with cash, just as Jessica had described. A thick roll of hundreds, more money than most people carried around casually. Outside the restaurant, Neil shook hands with Elias again. Pleasure doing business with you. I think we're going to have a very profitable relationship. I'm sure we will. Neil drove away. Clarissa was quiet during the ride home. Nice dinner, Elias said. Neil knows how to treat people well. Yes, he does. Cash payment was classy. What? He paid with cash. Big roll of bills. Very impressive. Clarissa didn't respond. At home, she went straight upstairs. Elias heard water running in the bathroom, then the bedroom door closing. He sat in his workshop until midnight, organizing tools and thinking about leverage points. Wednesday morning at 10:15 a.m., FBI agents arrested Neil Drake at his downtown office. The local news ran the story at noon. Financial advisor charged in multi-state lottery fraud scheme. Television cameras captured Neil being led away in handcuffs, his perfect hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled from the arrest process. Elias watched the coverage from the bridge inspection platform, his phone streaming video while he pretended to check cable measurements. The news reporter explained that Drake had been working with lottery commission employees to gain advance access to winning numbers, then helping clients purchase winning tickets in exchange for substantial portions of the prize money. Authorities estimate the fraud scheme netted over $12 million across 4 states, the reporter said. Several sufferers have come forward, describing how Drake convinced them to make large real estate investments that turned out to be worthless. Elias's phone rang at 12:30. They arrested Neil. Clarissa's voice was shaking. I saw the news. FBI agents came to my office. They want to interview me tomorrow morning. That makes sense. Elias, I need you to understand something. I didn't know about any fraud. Neil told me he was a legitimate financial advisor. I believe you. Do you really? Elias watched traffic move across the bridge below him, cars full of people going about their normal lives, unaware that someone was standing 140 feet above them, making decisions that would affect everything. Clarissa, come home. We'll figure this out together. What about the lottery money? The money's frozen until the investigation is complete. Could be months, maybe years. Years? Federal cases take time, but Jimmy says we'll eventually get our share, minus whatever Neil already stole. How much did he steal? Don't know yet. Depends on how much of the investment money actually went to legitimate purchases versus kickbacks and fraudulent schemes. Clarissa was quiet for a long time. I made a terrible mistake, she said finally. Yes, you did. Can you forgive me? Elias thought about 18 months of lies, secret meetings, infidelity, and betrayal. He thought about Carson growing up in a broken home, wondering why his parents couldn't trust each other. He thought about 23 years of marriage reduced to court documents and custody arrangements. Come home, Clarissa. We'll talk. She arrived at 6 p.m., driving her own car instead of riding with someone else for the first time in weeks. She looked exhausted, older somehow, like the stress had aged her several years in just a few days. Carson was in his room doing homework. Melanie had returned to her own apartment after the South Carolina trip. For the first time since this began, Elias and his wife were alone in their own house. They sat at the kitchen table where Neil had spread his investment documents the week before. How long? Elias asked. What do you mean? How long have you been sleeping with him? Clarissa stared at her hands. 14 months. Since January of last year. Yes. Where did you meet him? Corporate networking event. He was giving a presentation about wealth management strategies for professional women. And you thought he was attractive? I thought he was sophisticated, confident. He understood ambition in ways that... She stopped herself. In ways that I don't. You're a good man, Elias, but you've never wanted more than what we have. Nice house, steady job, comfortable life. I wanted something bigger. So you decided to cheat on me. I decided to explore possibilities. Elias leaned back in his chair. Tell me about the lottery ticket. Neil said he had a system. Mathematical analysis of number patterns, historical trends, statistical probabilities, very sophisticated approach. And you believed him? He showed me charts, graphs, computer models. It seemed scientific. He knew the winning numbers in advance, Clarissa. He was working with lottery employees to rig the system. I didn't know that. But you knew something was wrong. Nobody wins $10 million by accident and immediately has a financial advisor ready with investment strategies. I thought I was lucky. You thought you were smarter than everyone else. Clarissa looked up at him, tears forming in her eyes. I thought I deserved better than this life. This life? Working 60 hours a week, worrying about Carson's college tuition, driving a 5-year-old car, shopping at discount stores. I see my clients living in mansions, taking European vacations, buying whatever they want without checking their bank balance first. So you decided to steal your way into that lifestyle. I decided to take an opportunity when it presented itself. An opportunity to commit federal crimes with your lover. I was trying to build something for our family. Elias stood up and walked to the kitchen window. His workshop was visible across the yard, tools hanging in neat rows, everything organized and purposeful. Clarissa, if you'd won the lottery legitimately, I would have been happy for you. If you'd wanted to make investments, we could have discussed them together. If you'd been unhappy with our marriage, we could have gone to counseling. I know. Instead, you chose to lie, cheat, and commit crimes. You chose to humiliate me, endanger our son's future, and destroy everything we've built together. I made mistakes. You made choices." She started crying. Real tears, not the manipulative kind she used when she wanted something. The kind that came from understanding how badly she damaged everything important. "What happens now?" she asked. "The FBI wants to interview you tomorrow. You'll need a lawyer." "Will you come with me?" "I'll come with you." "And after that?" "Depends on what the FBI decides to charge you with." "I mean, with us. With our marriage." Elias turned back to face her. "I don't know." The FBI interview took place Thursday morning at the Federal Building downtown. Clarissa's lawyer was a criminal defense attorney Jimmy had recommended, someone with experience in white-collar fraud cases. Agent Walsh conducted the interview professionally, recording everything and asking detailed questions about Clarissa's relationship with Neil, her knowledge of his business practices, and her involvement in the lottery ticket purchase. "Mrs. Cray, when you bought the winning lottery ticket, did Mr. Drake tell you which numbers to select?" "He gave me a list of numbers he said had high statistical probability." "Did he explain how he'd calculated those probabilities?" "He said it was proprietary methodology, mathematical models he'd developed over several years." "Did you question why his models were so accurate?" "I thought he was very good at his job." "Mrs. Cray, did Mr. Drake ever mention working with lottery commission employees?" "No." "Did he ever suggest that he had advanced knowledge of winning numbers?" "No." "Did you know that he'd helped other clients win large lottery prizes in neighboring states?" "No." Agent Walsh showed Clarissa photographs of other lottery winners who'd worked with Neil, different women in different cities, all following the same pattern of sudden winnings and immediate real estate investments. "Do you recognize any of these women?" "No." Mr. Drake never mentioned previous clients who'd won large jackpots. He said he'd had some success with investment strategies, but he never gave specific details. The interview continued for 2 hours. Clarissa answered every question honestly, admitting her affair with Neil but denying knowledge of the lottery fraud scheme. Afterward, her lawyer met privately with Agent Walsh. "What's your assessment?" he asked. "She appears to be a sufferer rather than a willing participant. Infidelity isn't a federal crime, and we can't prove she knew about the lottery fraud." "Will you be filing charges against her?" "Probably not. We're focusing on Drake and his accomplices inside the Lottery Commission." "What about the money?" "The lottery winnings will remain frozen until we can determine how much was obtained through fraudulent means. Could be several months." Outside the federal building, Clarissa asked her lawyer what everything meant. "It means you're not going to prison, but you're also not getting rich. The government will probably seize most of the lottery money as proceeds from criminal activity." "How much will we keep?" "Hard to say. Maybe 20 or 30% after legal fees and restitution payments. $2 million instead of 7. Still life-changing money, but not enough to fund the lifestyle Clarissa had been planning. They drove home in silence. That evening, Carson asked to speak with both his parents together. "I need to understand what's happening," he said. "Kids at school are talking about FBI arrests and lottery fraud. My friends are asking if Mom's going to prison." Elias and Clarissa sat on opposite ends of the living room couch. Carson sat in the armchair, looking older than his 17 years. "Mom made some bad decisions," Elias said. "She got involved with someone who was breaking the law." "The financial advisor guy?" "Yes." "Were you sleeping with him?" Carson asked his mother directly. Clarissa closed her eyes. "Yes." "For how long?" "About a year." "So you were cheating on Dad?" "Yes." Carson looked at his father. "Did you know?" "I suspected something was wrong, but I didn't know for sure until this week." "What happens now?" "That depends on a lot of things," Clarissa said. "Legal issues, financial issues, family issues." "Are you getting divorced?" Elias and Clarissa looked at each other across the couch. "We haven't decided," Elias said. "Do I get a vote?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, this affects me too. Where I live, which parent I stay with, whether I can afford college. Do I get any say in what happens?" "Of course you do," Clarissa said. "Your opinion matters very much." "Then here's my opinion. Mom screwed up, really badly. But Dad, you've been checked out of this family for years." Elias frowned. "Checked out how?" "You work all the time. When you're home, you're in the workshop or watching television. You never ask about school, never come to my games, never seem interested in anything that's happening with me or Mom. I've been working to support this family. You've been avoiding this family. Mom was probably lonely and bored, and that guy paid attention to her? That doesn't excuse infidelity. No, it doesn't, but it explains it. Carson leaned forward in his chair. I don't want you to get divorced. I want you to fix whatever's wrong and figure out how to be married to each other again. It's not that simple, Clarissa said. Why not? Because trust is hard to rebuild. So work harder. Elias looked at his son, surprised by the young man's directness and maturity. What are you suggesting? Marriage counseling. Both of you committed to fixing this instead of just giving up. And Dad, you need to actually participate in this family instead of just providing for it. And your mother needs to end all contact with Neil and commit to being honest about everything. Obviously. They sat in the living room, three people trying to figure out how to rebuild something that had been badly damaged. I'm willing to try, Clarissa said quietly. So am I, Elias said. Good, because I'm not choosing sides in a divorce. If you split up, I'm moving in with Grandpa Tom and finishing high school there. Elias's father lived in Arizona, 1,200 miles away. Carson was serious about his threat. We'll try counseling, Elias said. Over the following weeks, several things happened quickly. Neil Drake was indicted on federal charges, including lottery fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. His trial was scheduled for the following year, with potential prison sentences ranging from 15 to 25 years. The State Gaming Commission launched a comprehensive investigation of lottery security procedures, leading to the arrest of 3 lottery employees who had been providing Neil with advance access to winning numbers. The federal government seized most of the lottery winnings as proceeds from criminal activity, but agreed to return $2.4 million to the Cray family after legal expenses and restitution payments. Clarissa was not charged with any crimes, but her corporate headhunting career effectively ended when her clients learned about her involvement in the lottery fraud case. Professional reputation mattered in her industry, and infidelity combined with federal investigations was a toxic combination. Elias and Clarissa began marriage counseling with a therapist who specialized in trust and betrayal issues. The sessions were difficult, emotional, and sometimes brutal in their honesty. Why did you cheat? The therapist asked during their third session. Because I felt invisible, Clarissa said. Elias came home from work, ate dinner, watched television, and went to bed. We never talked about dreams or goals or possibilities, just practical things like grocery shopping and bill payments. Did you communicate those feelings to your husband? I tried, but he always had some project in the workshop or some bridge inspection that was more important. The therapist turned to Elias. How do you respond to that? I thought I was being a good husband and father, working hard, providing financial security, taking care of responsibilities, but not providing emotional closeness. I guess not. Why do you think emotional closeness was difficult for you? Elias thought about the question carefully. My father worked construction, 60 hours a week, sometimes 7 days. He showed love by making sure we had food and shelter and clothes. He never talked about feelings or dreams or any of that stuff. So you modeled your approach to marriage on your father's approach? Yes, even though your wife needed something different. Even though I didn't understand what she needed. The counseling sessions continued twice a week for 3 months. Slowly, painfully, they began rebuilding communication and trust. Clarissa took a part-time job at a local nonprofit organization, accepting a substantial reduction in income, but finding work that felt meaningful rather than just profitable. Elias made changes too. He came home from bridge inspections at reasonable hours, instead of working late unnecessarily. He attended Carson's basketball games and academic events. He learned to ask questions about his family's lives and actually listened to the answers. Carson graduated from high school in June and was accepted to the state university with a partial academic scholarship. The remaining lottery money would cover his tuition and expenses, with enough left over for a modest family emergency fund. 6 months after Neil's arrest, Elias and Clarissa sat in their kitchen on a Saturday morning, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper together. The trial starts next week, Clarissa said, pointing to an article about Neil's upcoming court proceedings. You'll have to testify. I know. Are you ready for that? I think so. My lawyer says the prosecution just wants me to confirm the timeline and explain what Neil told me about the lottery numbers. Shouldn't take long. No, maybe an hour on the witness stand. They sat quietly, reading different sections of the paper. Elias? Yeah? Do you think we're going to make it? He looked across the table at his wife. She looked different than she had a year ago, less polished, less driven by image and status, more comfortable with herself. I think we have a chance. Just a chance? A good chance. She smiled. I'll take it. Neil's trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of the lottery fraud scheme, including recorded phone conversations, financial records, and testimony from multiple sufferers. Clarissa testified on Tuesday morning, answering questions clearly and honestly about her relationship with Neil and her lack of knowledge about the criminal activity. Mrs. Cray, did you know that the lottery numbers Mr. Drake gave you had been obtained illegally? No, I did not. Did he ever tell you that he was working with Lottery Commission employees? No. Did you believe you were participating in criminal activity when you purchased the lottery ticket? No. I believed I was following legitimate investment advice. Thank you, Mrs. Cray. No further questions. Neil's defense attorney tried to suggest that Clarissa had been more involved in the scheme than she admitted, but he couldn't present any evidence to support that theory. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. Neil was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $12 million in restitution to his sufferers. After the trial, Agent Walsh called Elias. Justice was served, she said. Drake won't be scamming anyone else for a very long time. What about the other sufferers? Most of them will recover at least some of their money through the restitution process. It'll take time, but the government is committed to making people whole. That's good to hear. Mr. Cray, I want to thank you for bringing this case to our attention. Without your documentation and cooperation, Drake might have continued operating for years. I was just protecting my family. You did more than that. You helped us stop a criminal enterprise that was destroying people's lives. That evening, Elias and Clarissa took a walk through their neighborhood. Spring weather, dogwood trees blooming, kids playing in yards while their parents worked in gardens. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd never bought that lottery ticket? Clarissa asked. Every day. Do you think we would have eventually gotten divorced anyway? Elias thought about it. Maybe. We weren't communicating well. We were growing apart. So maybe the lottery thing was actually good for us. Good? It forced us to confront problems we'd been ignoring. Nearly destroying our marriage was good for us. Nearly destroying our marriage and then choosing to rebuild it was good for us. They walked past the elementary school where Carson had played on the playground as a child, past the community center where they'd attended school board meetings and neighborhood association gatherings. Clarissa? Yeah, I love you. I love you too. But if you ever cheat on me again, I'll take you for everything you're worth, and you'll never see Carson except during supervised visits. She stopped walking and looked at him. That's not very romantic. It's honest. I like honest. Good, because that's all I know how to be anymore. They continued walking, holding hands for the first time in months. 2 years later, Carson was finishing his sophomore year at the university with a double major in engineering and business. His relationship with both parents had become stronger and more adult. Clarissa had been promoted to program director at the nonprofit organization. The work paid less than corporate headhunting, but she found it more satisfying. Elias had been offered a supervisory position with the State Transportation Department, overseeing bridge inspection teams across the region. Better pay, more responsibility, and the opportunity to train younger workers in proper safety procedures. They sold their house and bought a smaller place closer to downtown, using the equity to fund Carson's remaining college expenses and establish a retirement account. On their 25th wedding anniversary, they drove to the coast for a long weekend. Not an expensive resort, just a modest hotel with ocean views and quiet beaches. Saturday evening, they sat on the deck of a seafood restaurant, watching the sunset and sharing a bottle of wine. Do you ever think about Neil? Clarissa asked. Sometimes, do you? I wonder if he's learned anything in prison. If he understands how much damage he caused. Probably not. People like that usually blame everyone else for their problems. I blame myself. For what? For being so easily manipulated, for believing that shortcuts could replace hard work and patience? Elias reached across the table and took her hand. You made mistakes. We both did. But we learned from them. Do you forgive me? I forgave you a long time ago. Even for the affair? Even for the affair. Why? Because holding on to anger was poisoning everything good in my life. Because you've worked hard to rebuild trust. Because 25 years of marriage is worth fighting for. They finished dinner and walked along the beach. Waves rolled steadily against the shore, the sound rhythmic and peaceful. Elias? Yeah, thank you. For what? For not giving up on us. Thank you for being worth the effort. They walked back to their hotel as stars appeared in the clear sky above the ocean. Monday morning, they drove home to their normal lives. Elias returned to bridge inspections, checking cable tension and joint integrity, ensuring that people could travel safely across structures he helped maintain. Clarissa returned to her nonprofit work, helping families navigate social services and government assistance programs. Carson called from college to tell them about his latest engineering project and ask advice about internship opportunities. Life wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It was built on trust earned through consistent actions rather than promises. It was sustainable in the way that good marriages had to be sustainable, through daily choices to prioritize each other and the family they'd built together. Elias thought about Neil sometimes, serving 18 years in federal prison for lottery fraud and financial crimes. A man who'd had professional skills and intelligence, but had chosen to use them for deception and theft instead of legitimate work. The difference between success and failure often came down to character. The difference between temporary wealth and lasting happiness almost always came down to the relationships you built and maintained over time. 6 months after their anniversary trip, Elias received a letter forwarded through the federal prison system. Neil wanted to apologize, to explain his actions, to somehow make amends for the damage he'd caused. Elias read the letter once, then put it in his workshop trash can without showing it to Clarissa or Carson. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt once they collapsed under the weight of betrayal and criminal behavior. Some people didn't deserve second chances, no matter how articulate their apologies might be. But other bridges could be strengthened after structural damage, reinforced with better materials and more careful engineering. Those bridges lasted longer and carried heavier loads because they'd been built to withstand the stress of real-world conditions. 26 years after their wedding day, Elias and Clarissa were still married, still working on their relationship, still choosing each other despite the complicated history they'd accumulated. That was enough. That was everything.